Let me cover Korean economy of 1950s after the war. We will talk about how we stabilized inflation right after the war, and then we will talk about import substitution policy, the most important policy of 1950s. First, let's see how Korea has stabilized hyperinflation right after the war. Well, in almost every country which experienced war, they suffer from inflation because they print too much money during the war. And inflation had to be subdued before any meaningful industrialization began. So one of the first things that Korean government did in 1953 was to introduce currency reform. They changed the unit of currency from won to hwan in 1953. And they removed two zeros from the currency. For example, 100 won was converted into 1 hwan. After they introduced currency reform, now money supply was restricted. And you have to keep the government budget balanced in order to restrict money supply. Actually, when you print too much money, it was mostly because your government budget was in deficit. So unless you correct your government budget balance, printing money was unavoidable. And of course, when you increase the supply of goods and service to the market, price level goes down. That's a simple law of demand and supply. When supply increase, price go down. And that's what Korean government did exactly in 1950s. I will explain later what made these policies possible. In many senses, these policies were possible because of economic aid we received from United Nations and USA. After we stabilized inflation finally stabilized in 1958. Now the main focus was industrialization and economic growth. And in 1950, it was import substitution industrialization policy. Actually, this is a policy many other developing countries begin at the time of economic development. If you look at the background, it's easy to understand. Korea simply could not produce many industrial products, so we had to import many of them from foreign countries. And because we had to rely on import from foreign countries, our balance of payment situation got worsened and worsened. And we had to correct this balance of payment problem by reducing our dependence on import. In order to reduce our dependence on import, we had to produce industrial product domestically. And this was one way to achieve industrialization and growth. And this was exactly what many other early industrialized countries experienced in 19th century. So the goal was clear. Instead of importing something from foreign country, let's produce them domestically and replace foreign import with domestic production. When you compare this experience of Korea to Japan, you can find in this table that actually Japan had exactly same policy in the late 19th century until the early 20th century. In this table, P1 stage represents import substitution stage, and P2 represents export promotion, and P3 represents heavy and chemical industrialization. With a certain time lag, both Korea and Taiwan actually followed the footprint of Japan. And this kind of explanation can be found in so-called flying geese hypothesis. This is one of the very popular model in economic development theory. Like flying geese, developing countries follow the experience of advanced countries. So let's take a look at the policy tools of import substitution in 1950s. Now the main goal is to produce something domestically instead of importing from foreign countries. So